Clang, clang. Driving through the dark night on an unfamiliar road was clearly an unwise decision. The loud noise of the train had already attracted the howls of zombies outside. Realizing the situation couldn't go on like this, Lin Xian hurriedly ran to the control cabin. "We're about to reach the elevated rail line on the third ring road. Maybe we can stop there for a bit," Chan Sixuan suggested, seemingly picking up on Lin Xian's worries and immediately providing a feasible solution. "That works." Lin Xian nodded. Stopping on the elevated bridge would be much safer. It would put them far from the ground, where most zombies wouldn't be able to reach. However, what Lin Xian worried about most at this moment was that white giant they had encountered earlier. Screech. After stopping the train on the elevated rail, Lin Xian immediately turned off all the interior lights. At the same time, he kept an eye on the movements outside. "What was that thing earlier?" Chan Sixuan asked, her face pale. Lin Xian shook his head. "Who knows? If that thing decides to target us, we'll be lucky to survive with just a layer of skin intact. So what do we do now? Wait until daylight to leave the city?" Chan Sixuan pressed. "That's the plan. There's a freight warehouse near John City Station. We'll check it out tomorrow, and we should be able to leave the city after that." Lin Xian actually had another objective in mind. He wanted to see if he could find an electric locomotive at John City Station. In this era, the industrial base was almost entirely electrified. However, electric locomotives didn't have their own engines and relied on electricity from the catenary system to power their traction motors. Once the railway power grid shut down, these mechanical beasts became nothing more than dead weight, lying idle on the tracks with almost no value. Of course, they were worthless to most people but not to Lin Xian. He had previously envisioned attaching an electric locomotive as a backup generator. When he used his abilities to propel the train forward, the electric locomotive could convert kinetic energy into stored electricity. Even with an efficiency rate of just 30 to 40%, it would still provide power for the train during his rest periods. This would enable a temporary cycle of infinite energy for running the train and powering other onboard systems. John City Station was a large hub. If he could find what he needed there, it would save him a lot of effort later. "Have you eaten anything?" Lin Xian asked as he turned to look at Chan Sixuan. He noticed how utterly exhausted she looked. Although she had finally managed to eat something today and regain a bit of strength, she had been struggling to survive alone in a pitch-dark home for over 2 months. Her mental state had long been teetering on the brink of collapse. Having witnessed the tragic death of Director Liang earlier and then facing a terrifying monster attack, she was now visibly shaken, her mind almost detached. Chan Sixuan hesitated. Her voice was soft and timid as she replied, "I just sorted through the water and food supplies. From a rough calculation, if we eat just 1 meal a day, we can only last about a month." As she said this, her tone carried a trace of guilt. She had already calculated herself and Lin Xian into this 1 meal a day scenario without consulting him. Lin Xian hadn't explicitly told her she was allowed to eat at the same rate as him. Lin Xian's gaze flickered as he glanced toward the first carriage. By now, Chan Sixuan had tidied everything up. The beds and sofas were all neatly arranged, with pillows and blankets set properly. Aside from the flat-screen TV, which she didn't know how to set up, and the steel-framed bed, which hadn't been welded yet, the first carriage had been transformed from a vagabond's messy den into a cozy one-bedroom space. After months of living under the fear of the apocalypse, the sight of it made both of them yearn to lie down and sleep. Lin Xian walked over to the storage rack and grabbed a can of fruit, handing it to Chan Sixuan. "Here, eat this. Then get some sleep." "Huh?" Chan Sixuan exclaimed in surprise, her voice betraying both astonishment and hesitation as she stared at the can in his hand. Her eyes carried a mixture of longing and unease. The sweet, enticing fruit can immediately triggered her appetite, but Lin Xian's words, "get some sleep," left her momentarily dazed, her mind wandering. Thank you, she murmured, obediently taking the can. She sat down on the sofa, opened it, and took a sip. The sweetness was overwhelming, and it seemed to awaken every cell in her body, filling her with an inexplicable sense of relief and joy. At that moment, Chan Sixuan felt lightheaded, her consciousness growing fuzzy. She ate the fruit in big bites, and a faint thought began to surface in her mind. So sweet, so delicious. I just want to sleep. Sigh. What does it matter if I'm a student and he's a teacher? In this kind of world, he's just a man, and I'm just a woman. Besides, he's an able user. He saved my life. Even my life is his. What else is there to think about? If he wants something, then so be it. This thought echoed in her mind like the whispers of a demon, making her shiver. Her body tensed, and she subconsciously tightened her legs. It was a terrifying yet oddly liberating sensation, as though abandoning her old principles brought her an exhilarating sense of freedom. Very quickly, Chan Sixuan finished the entire can of fruit. She stood up but paused halfway, seemingly remembering something. Turning back, she picked up her backpack and pulled out a small object, clutching it tightly in her hand before silently sitting down on the edge of the bed. At the same time, Lin Xian was in the third carriage, using his ability to repair the damaged hydraulic lift gate. When he returned to the first carriage and saw Chan Sixuan sitting on the bed with her head lowered, his brows furrowed. "What are you doing sitting there? Go to sleep already. We're taking turns keeping watch tonight, so get some rest now and get up later." Hearing this, Chan Sixuan looked up in surprise, her expression flashing with a mix of emotions. She hastily replied, Oh, okay." Her face flushed with both embarrassment and frustration. Quickly, she got up, walked to the sofa, took off her shoes, and lay down. The small object she had been holding was discreetly stuffed back into her bag. Lin Xian grabbed a bottle of water, his sharp gaze not missing Chan Sixuan's flustered demeanor. Still, he wasn't the kind of person to let his thoughts be ruled by desire. They didn't even know if they'd managed to shake off that white giant. At a time like this, when survival was hanging by a thread, only an idiot would waste their energy dwelling on anything less than critical. Lin Xian then headed to the second carriage. The mysterious young girl was still fast asleep, which struck him as odd. By now, she'd been sleeping for nearly 20 hours since last night until now. Was she really asleep, or just pretending? Frowning, Lin Xian bent down in front of her, reaching out to pinch her soft, chubby cheeks. "Hey, if you keep pretending to sleep, I'll toss you out onto the road. Wake up. I'm gonna pull your pants off." "Oh, pink ones, huh?" Despite his antics, the girl remained peacefully asleep, her expression serene. Her long lashes trembled slightly, leaving Lin Xian feeling a little defeated. If it weren't for the mysterious and unknown ability she seemed to possess, Lin Xian wouldn't have even considered saving her. At best, she could turn out to be a harmless burden, but who knew whether she'd become a help or a threat once she woke up. As the night deepened, the temperature plummeted. Lin Xian let out a helpless sigh and carried the girl to the first carriage. By then, Chan Sixuan had already fallen into an exhausted, deep sleep. He laid the girl down on the sofa beside Chan Sixuan and covered both women with brand new thick blankets. "Well, keeping a whole train full of beauties doesn't seem too bad," Lin Xian muttered to himself. He glanced at the two sleeping women, one breathtakingly beautiful with a gentle and elegant demeanor, the other delicate and charming, like a budding flower. For some reason, a strange sense of roguish satisfaction welled up within him. Current mechanical heart level, LV.1210/500. Tip: upgrading the mechanical heart grants special skill rewards. At LV3, LV6, and LV9, mysterious awakenings are unlocked. Base attributes: Strength, LV127/50. Speed, LV18/50. Defense, LV018/30. Current basic skills. Mechanical Devour LV.1278/300. Mechanical Manufacturing LV.1112/300. Mechanical Scan, Passive. Mechanical Repair, Passive. Mechanical Operation, Passive. Special Skill. Wind Cannon LV.112/100. Wait, what? I used Wind Cannon twice on that white monster, so why did the skill proficiency jump up so much? Lin Xian stared at the Wind Cannon's proficiency, now at 12, and was momentarily stunned. He had assumed each use would only increase proficiency by 1 point. Instead, it suddenly leaped forward significantly. Could it be that in critical situations, the mastery of a skill increases significantly? After some thought, Lin Xian felt this hypothesis was plausible. At the same time, devouring a small cargo truck had brought him immense benefits: 30 mechanical energy points, 10 devour proficiency points, and even a 12-point increase in attributes. It was a major profit. D*MN, if someone could give me access to a parking lot, I'd be working 996 without a break, Lin Xian grumbled to himself. But he knew that was wishful thinking. Looking back at the earlier situation, he couldn't shake the feeling that pure luck had played a big part in his survival. That monster must have stood near him for a while, as he had indeed heard some movement earlier. Perhaps because he stayed focused and didn't make a sound, the monster didn't immediately attack. Otherwise, he would have already been skewered like a kebab. As expected, high risks came with high rewards. Each vehicle took Lin Xian at least an hour and a half to devour, requiring him to maintain intense focus and expend a lot of physical energy. With Zhang City now plunged into the dark tides, daylight lasted less than 4 hours a day. There simply wasn't enough time or opportunity to devour at his leisure. And once night fell, who knew what kind of horrors might emerge? Could I tow a freight carriage and slowly devour it at night? He wondered. But he quickly dismissed the thought. Wait, nah, it's not feasible. An empty freight car is just a metal frame, it won't provide much benefit. Unless it's a locomotive or something. But a locomotive weighs hundreds of tons. Devouring that would take forever, and I'm not even sure I'd have the stamina for it. Over the past few months, Lin Xian had brainstormed many ideas, only to find that reality was far more complex than he had imagined. At 3 p.m., the sky suddenly brightened, and Zhang City was greeted with a fleeting dawn. The city lay in eerie silence. Lin Xian stood by the intercity line, gazing northwest. That direction remained shrouded in gray and black, as if enveloped by a massive storm. He knew that was where Lu City and Ding Prefecture were located, areas that had vanished almost immediately on Apocalypse Day. Those areas were also the center of the Third Abyss. Compared to the fate of those regions, Zhang City, now a wasteland, was almost fortunate. At least it had given its citizens time to migrate, leaving behind a few survivors clinging to life. Lin Xian still remembered his trip to Lu City, where the rice noodles and barbecue had left a lasting impression. But now, these cultural symbols of humanity had been reduced to ashes in the blink of an eye. The light streaming through the armored gaps of the train windows fell on Chan Sixuan's face, stirring her awake. She opened her eyes slowly and saw Lin Xian welding the bed frame. She immediately flipped upright, guilt evident on her face as she apologized. "I'm sorry. Lin Xian, did I oversleep?" "It's fine," Lin Xian replied without turning his head. "You didn't seem in great shape. Plus, last night was unique. That monster might come back, so I didn't wake you." Even now, with the daylight returning, Lin Xian couldn't shake the unease in his heart. That white giant might even be capable of breaking through his steel fortress. Waking Chan Sixuan to stand watch would have been useless. His top priority was to continuously reinforce the infinite train's defenses and boost his own strength as quickly as possible. You stayed up all night. Lin Xian finished welding the steel-framed bed and stood up, handing Chen Sixuan a bottle of water. Today, we'll pass by the freight unloading area in Zhang City. The situation there might be tricky, so prepare yourself mentally. Okay, Chen Sixuan replied, her guilt clear as she nodded quickly. I'll follow your lead today. No need. I have another task for you. Lin Xian led Chen Sixuan to the control cabin. The infinite train had already started moving slowly. As they advanced, Lin Xian explained to her. This main route merges into the Jianjiao line, so it shouldn't deviate at any switches. If the opportunity arises, I plan to tow an electric locomotive onto the train today. When that happens, I'll need to get off to manually operate the track switch. While connecting the carriages, I need you to handle the coupling instructions. Pointing to a few controls, Lin Xian patiently explained. This one disengages the lock, this one aligns the couplers, this one connects the brake systems, and this one tests the link. For Chen Sixuan, these technical terms weren't entirely unfamiliar. She had grown up exposed to railway knowledge, thanks to her father's influence. She understood that this was the process for coupling train carriages. However, understanding the theory was one thing, actually doing it was entirely new to her. So, she listened intently to Lin Xian's explanation, afraid to miss even a single detail. Coupling carriages was also a complicated task for Lin Xian. The biggest challenge was that he couldn't simultaneously control two carriages using the mechanical heart. To switch tracks, he had to manually operate the track switch himself. But once he got off the train, the infinite train would lose its power source. The only solution was to manually push the train forward while ensuring the electric locomotive's coupler and brake hook were in a release state. In this energy-deprived scenario, Lin Xian would have to run back and forth between tasks. Moreover, if he did manage to find an electric locomotive, he needed to position it behind a gas turbine locomotive and before the first carriage. The Whale 03E locomotive's front end was already armored, and compared to an electric locomotive, the gas turbine locomotive was far tougher. That meant the electric locomotive had to take the second position. All in all, the operation was incredibly complicated. If Lin Xian were working alone, it would take him an entire day. But with Chen Sixuan's help, he could save at least half a day. Clang, clang. The train slowly exited the city center, heading toward Zhang City Station. As they left the urban area, their view opened up, and several main roads leading out of the city unfolded before Lin Xian and Chen Sixuan. But in an instant, both of their expressions changed. The roads were completely jammed with tens of thousands of cars, forming an unbroken chain that rendered the routes impassable. Pools of blood, severed limbs, burning car frames, and scattered luggage and clothing littered the scene. Everything screamed of the hellish nightmare that had unfolded on the path out of the city. Not a single living soul was in sight after the darkness had passed. The hills and plains were overrun with zombies wandering aimlessly. Those who could run already ran. The ones left behind aren't getting out, Lin Xian muttered. The roads out of the city were completely blocked. Unless you were driving a tank or knew some hidden back road, the only way to escape the city was on foot. But with the polar night creeping closer and daytime reduced to just over 3 hours, how far could anyone get on foot? And even if they managed to get out of the city, what then? When night fell, what chance did they have? The monsters in the darkness were creatures even Lin Xian, an ability user, couldn't contend with, let alone ordinary humans. Looking at the horrific scenes on the main roads, Chen Sixuan's eyes trembled slightly. She then glanced at the clear railway tracks ahead. At this moment, she felt immensely fortunate to have met Lin Xian and even more fortunate to be aboard this train. The slow-moving train caught the attention of some survivors hiding in nearby houses along the tracks. Several pairs of furtive eyes peeked out, and whispers began to spread. A train? That's impossible. Where did it come from? Stop! Stop! Someone shouted loudly from inside a building. Take me with you. I have supplies. Keep your voice down, or you'll bring the zombies here. Quick, shut the window. Clang. Someone even threw a stone at the train, screaming hysterically. Stop. Let me on the train. Will they try to rob us? Chen Sixuan asked nervously as the sound of the stone hitting the train echoed around them. They're not here to offer help, that's for sure, Lin Xian replied indifferently. In the apocalypse, fighting over supplies even to the death wasn't uncommon. Survival rule number 3, better you than me. Lin, Chen Sixuan began softly. Her voice was soothing, with a pleasant cadence that Lin Xian found hard to ignore. Every time she spoke, he felt more certain about his choice to save her. Having a woman like her on this journey of life and death made everything feel just a little more bearable. Her presence often reminded him of their time at school, of how she used to wear her black-framed glasses, frowning seriously while explaining vocabulary to him. Hearing her voice, Lin Xian looked up, and his pupils contracted slightly. It was snowing. Outside the train, snowflakes drifted down, landing on the windows and melting into tiny droplets of water. Is it winter already? Chen Sixuan stared blankly at the snowflakes outside, muttering to herself. By the calendar, winter was still several months away. However, Zhang City had been growing colder by the day. And now, with snow gently falling, Lin Xian felt a chill in his heart. His concerns weren't baseless after all. Aside from the darkness, zombies, and eerie occurrences, yet another disaster was quietly descending as the climate began to shift. Natural disasters. If extreme cold and snowstorms arrived, the problems wouldn't just be about enduring the cold. Humans would need more food to maintain their body temperature. The train would need significantly more energy to keep running. In the case of severe low temperatures, they might even need to install a heating system on board the train. Lin Xian cursed under his breath. He had been planning to find a refrigerator to store food, but judging by the current situation, it didn't seem like that would be necessary anymore. Because the train was still moving within the city limits, Lin Xian deliberately slowed its speed. The city was in chaos, and he wanted to avoid blocked tracks and reduce noise that might attract unnecessary trouble. Merging from the light rail line onto the Jianjiao main line, the surroundings began to open up. Occasionally, stray zombies or animals wandering the tracks were simply crushed under the train's wheels. Soon, the number of track switches increased, leading to a wide-open area filled with various freight trains parked on the branch lines. There were several container trains among them, but without exception, all the cargo doors were wide open. The supplies inside had long been looted by survivors, leaving behind only empty cardboard boxes and plastic bags scattered across the ground. What remained were mixed freight trains with different carriages, including boxcars, flatbeds, and tankers, but even those hadn't been spared. Some carriages had even toppled over onto the tracks. The branch line connected to a distant loading platform and hoisting workshop clearly. This was Zhang City's rail freight loading center. These facilities were typically located just before passenger stations within a city. Lin Xian stopped the infinite train at the entrance to the double-track railway leading into the freight station. He studied the layout, then opened the train door and stepped out toward the track switch next to the branch line. Placing his hand on it, he activated the motor. Screech. The track switch shifted. Lin Xian returned to the train and drove it onto the branch line, stopping at a platform marked Loading Platform No. 4. Take this walkie-talkie. Even if it's me, don't open the door. I'll open it myself when I get back, Lin Xian instructed Chen Sixuan as he slung his backpack over his shoulder and grabbed his short blade. As long as you don't open the door, no one can touch you. Chen Sixuan nodded, Understanding that Lin Xian's ability to control the train meant he could handle things on his own, she obediently committed his instructions to memory. "Be careful out there," she responded with genuine concern. The airlock door of the control cabin hissed open. Apart from the control cabin door and the hydraulic liftgate in the third carriage, all other doors on the Infinite Train's living carriages had been welded shut and reinforced with steel plates. As long as they didn't encounter a strange creature like last night's white giant, neither ordinary people nor zombies posed any real threat to their safety inside. Stepping out of the train, Lin Xian closed the door behind him. A bone-chilling wind greeted him immediately, cutting through his clothes and stinging his face. He glanced at the blazing sun overhead and cursed the bizarre weather. With his upgraded speed attribute, Lin Xian's movements were much more agile. Blade in hand, he crossed several tracks, glancing toward the front and rear of each train he passed, searching for a suitable locomotive. His plan was to use the daylight to secure an electric locomotive. If he couldn't find one here, he'd look for supplies instead and then continue to Zhang City Station a few kilometers ahead. One by one, Lin Xian scanned the trains until he reached the front of a container train. There, he spotted a silver Huansing 7F electric locomotive. His eyes lit up. The Huansing 7F electric locomotive stretched 60 meters long, with a sleek silver body accented by blue stripes. Its aerodynamic design gave it a futuristic appearance, earning it the nickname Huansing Hercules. With a power output of 58,800 kilowatts, it was the standard freight locomotive for Huansing railways. This behemoth required connection to the railway power grid to operate. In the post-apocalypse, it had become a useless hulk, sitting idle on the tracks collecting dust. Without fuel or water, and with its interior cramped and impractical, no one had bothered trying to make use of it. The Huansing 7F was twice as long as the Whale 03E heavy gas turbine locomotive and was a true electric monster. Its precision engineering included not only traction motors but also advanced kinetic energy recovery and storage systems, making it the perfect temporary battery for the Infinite Train. "You're the one," Lin Xian muttered, placing his hand on the locomotive. His mechanical heart began scanning the machine, revealing that it was in excellent condition, practically brand new. This was a jackpot. Thanks to his unique ability, what other survivors saw as useless junk was a priceless treasure to him. Just as Lin Xian prepared to activate the locomotive and disconnect it from its carriages, a faint, intermittent sound came from behind him. He immediately turned cautiously toward the source. The sound came from one of the warehouses on the platform. Crouching low, Lin Xian slipped through the gap between two freight cars, following the noise. It led him to a warehouse marked with the number 14. Thud, 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 thud. A series of rhythmic knocks echoed out. It was consistent, unlike the mindless noises made by zombies. Climbing onto the platform, Lin Xian approached the warehouse cautiously, the sound growing louder with each step. He could faintly hear someone shouting, "Help! Is anyone there?" The voice was muffled, as if blocked by some soundproofing material. Lin Xian arrived at the door of Warehouse 14 and peered inside through the partially ajar entrance. He discovered that it was a cold storage facility, with two large white freezers inside. However, due to Zhang City's power outage, the interior reeked of an indescribable stench of decay. The smell hit Lin Xian like a punch, and he almost threw up the canned meat he'd eaten earlier. As Lin Xian ventured further into the warehouse, he finally spotted the source of the noise. Behind the isolation window of a large freezer marked 1, 2 women were visible. One, seemingly in her 30s, was frantically pounding on the door, her face flushed red with desperation. The other, an older woman in her 50s or 60s, was slumped on the ground, barely breathing. The moment Lin Xian stepped inside, the younger woman noticed him and immediately cried out, "Please, help me open the door. My mom is dying." But as soon as Lin Xian heard those words, his eyes narrowed sharply. Something felt off. Without hesitation, he leapt forward in a single swift motion. In the very next instant, the sharp crack of a gunshot rang out behind him. Bang! An ambush. Lin Xian instantly saw through their ploy. A woman locked in a freezer crying out for help. It was too strange, too coincidental. Her shouting would have drawn zombies, not saviors. It was obvious that her cries were meant to bait him. Bang! 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 The first shot missed, and a volley of bullets followed. Lin Xian didn't stop moving for a second. His reflexes were lightning fast as he darted into the doorway of another freezer, slamming the heavy door shut behind him. Clang! Clang! Bullets hit the freezer door, sending sparks flying. Damn, this guy's fast. Don't let him get away. Ha, what an idiot. He's holed himself up in a freezer now. Two men quickly rushed after him, both armed, one with a long gun and the other with a shorter weapon. The leader, a man in his 40s with a sinister expression and a large tattoo snaking up his neck, kicked the freezer door hard but found it locked tight. D*MN, that's strange. The skinnier man, standing nearby, peeked through the small observation window at Lin Xian, who was inside the freezer, his posture guarded and vigilant. The skinny man tugged on the door handle, but it didn't budge. Why won't this damn door open? Large industrial freezer doors were specially designed to prevent the handle from freezing up due to condensation forming and icing over. As a safety feature, the doors could only be opened from the outside, while the inside had an emergency alarm button. But something unusual had happened. The door wouldn't open from the outside at all after Lin Xian entered. The tattooed man cursed. He raised his gun and fired 2 rounds at the freezer's observation window. The shots echoed loudly in the warehouse, but the bullets only left faint marks on the thick glass. The observation window was 200 millimeters thick, and the freezer itself was built like a fortress to ensure optimal insulation. "Mom," the tattooed man suddenly called out. At his shout, the freezer door marked 1 creaked open. The younger woman who had been feigning distress earlier stepped out, followed closely by the older woman who had seemed on the verge of death just moments ago. The group of people began to encircle Lin Xian's position, their faces unfriendly and hostile. "This kid's got sharp instincts," one of them muttered darkly. "Humph." The old lady's face suddenly changed, shedding her frail, half-dead demeanor. She shot a venomous glance at Lin Xian, who was trapped in the freezer. "It's stuffy as hell in there. If he wants to die inside, let him die." "Exactly, that place stinks even worse than this one. Let's see how long he can last." Another young woman, dripping with sweat, fanned herself with her hand and complained, "It's just that this damn freezer's soundproofing is too good. My throat's practically hoarse from yelling." The old lady shot her a dissatisfied glare. "What do you know? If you don't put on a proper act, how are you going to bait the fish? Mom, your tricks always work." Inside the freezer, Lin Xian's expression darkened. He could tell this family had probably done this kind of thing before. Fortunately, he was vigilant and reacted quickly. Otherwise, in just half a second, he might have lost his life at gunpoint. At the moment, his cold gaze locked onto the 4 outside. It wasn't hard to figure out that the old lady was the mastermind of this family, while the other 2 were her sons and daughter-in-law. Of course. Haven't you heard that the older the ginger, the spicier? The old lady cast a cold glance at Lin Xian. "Today's fish is quick, but he doesn't seem too smart." Ran straight into a dead end. "Hey, brother, why don't you come out and hand over the train keys? I promise to let you go." A middle-aged man stepped forward, addressing Lin Xian inside the freezer. Sure enough, they had already scouted his infinite train pulling into the platform and set up this fishing ploy to kill him and seize the train. "You think I'd believe you?" Lin Xian responded coldly. "All right, since you won't come out, then you can rot in there for all I care." The man holding the long gun sneered at Lin Xian and grabbed an iron chain from somewhere, wrapping it around the freezer door handle to lock it from the outside. "Dad." At this moment, a chubby boy, about 11 or 12 years old, came running in excitedly, his face full of pride as he addressed the middle-aged man. "I just checked. There's a woman on that train, really pretty." The middle-aged man's name was Huan Zhaojian, while the one with the long gun was his younger brother, Huan Ji. "Two people dare to drive a train. Pretty gutsy." Huan Ji laughed mockingly at the boy's words, then turned to the old lady. "Mom, what's the plan? What do you think?" The old lady glared at him. "You really are as dense as a brick. There's bound to be a lot of stuff on that train. If it's functional, wouldn't it be better to hide on it than in the stinky freezer?" "True." Gong Li's eyes lit up. "That way, we could finally leave this hellhole." Huan Zhaojian scowled at his wife. "Leave with what? Do you even know how to drive a train?" "I can't drive, but someone else can." "Didn't Ale say there's a pretty woman on board?" "These two young people clearly know how. How hard can it be?" "I want to drive the train. I want to drive the train." The chubby boy, Ale, bounced up and down with excitement at the thought of operating the train. "Yeah, driving a train can't be that hard. Bro, don't kill the pretty lady, leave her for me. Ha ha ha." Huang Ji perked up, grinning. "Shut up." Just as the group was getting carried away, the old lady glanced at Lin Xian in the freezer and signaled to the others with her eyes. "Huang Ji, you stay here and keep watch," she ordered. Then, pulling the rest along, she moved away, seemingly to discuss their next steps in private. "Old hag, keep dreaming." But just as the old lady was about to leave, Lin Xian suddenly spoke up from inside the freezer. He had already guessed her intentions, so he deliberately made his move in front of everyone. Slowly, he pulled a walkie-talkie from behind his back. "Ms. Chen, there's a bit of trouble on my side. Whatever you do, don't open the train doors," he said firmly. "Huh? Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "All right, I won't open the doors, no matter what." Chen Sixuan's tense voice came through the walkie-talkie. Huan Zhaojian exploded with rage upon realizing Lin Xian had a walkie-talkie. He stomped furiously at the freezer door. The old lady, seeing her plan exposed, bit her lip in frustration. Still, she quickly approached the freezer and sneered at Lin Xian. "A dog locked in a cage. What, do you plan to drag this out with us? The air in there can't be too pleasant, can it?" She wasn't wrong. The freezer reeked of a putrid stench that made Lin Xian feel dizzy. He had used his ability to lock the freezer's mechanical door from inside, buying himself some safety for now, but he was still trapped. "F your uncle." Huan Zhaojian smacked the freezer window, yelling viciously. "Kid, you think you can run? Let's see how long you last. If you piss me off, I'll drag that woman out and F her in front of you." The old lady's face turned even more venomous. "If you know what's good for you, you'll cooperate. You and the woman drive the train, and we'll all escape together. I guarantee you'll live. How about it?" In her eyes, Lin Xian was nothing more than a bird trapped in a cage. Though they couldn't get to him at the moment, she knew the freezer had poor ventilation and was unbearably foul-smelling. Staying inside for long was impossible. With no other exit, she figured Lin Xian was simply putting up a futile resistance. The mother and son duo played their roles like clockwork, one threatening, the other coaxing, which almost made Lin Xian laugh. While he had his wind cannon skill, taking on two armed men head-on was reckless. Lin Xian wasn't a battle-hardened soldier or a fearless ranger, he was just a college student. His combat experience wasn't exactly stellar. If not for his quick reflexes earlier, he'd already be dead at the hands of the Huang brothers. Now trapped in the freezer, and with Chen Sixuan unable to assist him, Lin Xian's thoughts churned. Suddenly, a bold idea formed in his mind. He ignored the people outside and rummaged through his backpack, pulling out a flashlight to survey his surroundings. Outside, the old lady, fearing the train might escape, signaled her sons to check it out. Click. Lin Xian switched on the flashlight, illuminating the massive freezer. Shelves stood neatly arranged, but the goods had long been looted. Melted blood from frozen meats pooled on the ground, filling the air with a nauseating stench. Sweeping the light deeper into the room, Lin Xian noticed a row of large freezer cabinets on the other side. His eyes lit up as he approached them one by one. Though the cabinets were empty, they had another purpose: they could be devoured. Since he couldn't leave for the time being and the freezer served as a natural fortress, Lin Xian decided he could safely start devouring the large appliances around him. With this in mind, he picked up the walkie-talkie again. "Miss Chen, plans have changed. I'm temporarily trapped here. Stay in the train tonight, don't open the door, don't turn on the lights, and don't make a sound. Wait for my signal." On the train, Chen Sixuan's face grew visibly panicked upon hearing Lin Xian's words. Through the gap in the armored window, she could see two armed men crossing the tracks and heading in her direction. Her expression tensed as she whispered, "Lin Xian, someone's coming. I know. Don't be afraid. As long as you don't open the door, they can't do anything to you." Biting her lower lip, Chen Sixuan nodded. "Okay." Just as she finished speaking, there came a loud bang, bang, bang on the front cab door. "Open up. Open the damn door, or I'll shoot. The guy is in our hands. If you don't want him to die, then open the door right now." Chen Sixuan gripped the walkie-talkie tightly and retreated into the number 1 carriage. This was her first time dealing with such a situation, and there was no way she wasn't nervous. But Lin Xian's words had etched themselves into her mind. No matter what they said, she knew she absolutely couldn't open the door. Clang. At that moment, Huang Ji, holding a long gun, climbed up to the front windshield. Pressing himself against it, he cupped his hands over his eyes to peer inside. Through the glass, he immediately spotted Chen Sixuan, whose face was pale with panic. His eyes lit up instantly, and he nearly started drooling. "Bro. That chick's right there. She's effing gorgeous. Bro, let me take her as my wife." Since the apocalypse had come, society had completely collapsed. Huang Ji, still single, had been bitterly holding out. Just the thought of it made him seethe with frustration. Now, seeing such a stunning woman like Chen Sixuan, a rush of heat surged straight to his head. In this lawless and chaotic environment, human savagery had been amplified to the extreme. Huang Ji could barely hold himself back and wanted to storm inside immediately. Bang, bang. Eyes practically blazing with desire, he frantically picked up the butt of his rifle and smashed it against the windshield of the infinite train. But no matter how hard he hit, the windshield didn't so much as crack. Huang Ji, his eyes bloodshot, stood up abruptly, disengaged the safety on his gun, and fired a burst directly at the windshield. Rat-a-tat-tat. Sparks flew, and stray bullets ricocheted wildly, but the windshield remained completely unscathed. What Huang Ji didn't know was that the Whale 03E heavy gas turbine locomotive was the first-generation locomotive designed for the planetary orbital rail. With a top speed of 450 km per hour, its windshield was made from a specialized composite fiber combined with high-strength glass. Ordinary rifle bullets posed little to no threat to it. "Keep it down, for F's sake." The deafening gunshots echoed throughout the frayed platform, enraging his older brother, Huan Zhaojian, who barked at him, "Are you trying to get us killed? If you attract those monsters, we're all dead." "But, brother, there's a chick in there." Huang Ji, now desperate, kept swallowing hard as he stared into the train, unable to take his eyes off Chen Sixuan, who had ducked out of sight. His face was full of frustration. Huang Zhaojian climbed up as well, stealing a glance through the window. The sight of Chen Sixuan made his pupils contract, and a flicker of greed flashed through his eyes. Still, he quickly masked it and forced a stern expression. "Don't rush it. She can't run. Once we deal with that guy and get the train keys, everything will be ours." "Right, right." Huang Ji nodded repeatedly, his heated gaze once again falling on the carriage interior. When he couldn't spot Chen Sixuan, he spitefully spat at the window. "Little beauty, just you wait." As he was about to leave, he suddenly stopped, an obscene grin spreading across his face. He unzipped his pants and shamelessly relieved himself on the train window, indulging in a twisted sense of satisfaction before finally walking off with his gun. Inside the freezer, Lin Xian listened to Chen Sixuan's updates about the situation outside, his eyes flashing with cold determination. "Ignore them. Just rest in the number 1 carriage. If you're hungry, eat something," he instructed calmly. "Lin Xian." Chen Sixuan's voice trembled. "You are not going to be in trouble, are you?" "I won't," Lin Xian replied evenly. Putting away the walkie-talkie, Lin Xian focused on the freezer's interior. After completing the blueprint scan of the commercial freezer, he placed his hand on it and began mechanical devouring without wasting another second. Devouring progress, 1%. As soon as the progress bar appeared, Lin Xian realized that devouring this large freezer was just as challenging as the small freight vehicle he'd consumed earlier. And there wasn't just one of these freezers in the room. Plenty of time today. I might as well devour them all. To Lin Xian, this was a rare opportunity. Although escaping the dark tides of Zhang City was his top priority, being stuck here meant he could use the time to strengthen his abilities. "Where's that guy?" Outside the freezer, Huang Zhaojian returned with Huang Ji to find Gonli and the boy keeping watch. The old lady scowled impatiently. "He's hiding inside. Leave him for now." "What's the situation with the train?" Huang Ji's excitement was palpable. "Mom, my brother, and I checked. There's definitely just one woman on board. I bet the carriages are loaded with supplies. We've struck gold." The old lady nodded. "You two find some tools. While there's still daylight, see if you can pry open the freezer door. I'd rather avoid complications. Who knows how many days of total darkness are coming again. I'm not sure my old bones can survive another long night." "That's what I was thinking too." Huang Zhaojian was equally anxious. Running into such a golden opportunity, he wanted to take advantage of it as quickly as possible. After a brief discussion, the group set off to find steel pipes and crowbars to force open the freezer door. By now, it was 5 p.m., less than 2 hours before nightfall. If they didn't open the door before dark, they'd have to wait until tomorrow. Meanwhile, in the dark corner of the freezer, Lin Xian endured the overwhelming stench as he continued devouring the large freezer. Devouring progress, 80%. Devouring progress, 95%. After nearly an hour, the massive freezer was finally almost devoured. At the same time, the sound of prying and banging echoed from the freezer door. However, Lin Xian wasn't particularly worried. He had scanned the door earlier when he locked it. The 150 mm thick low-temperature freezer door was composed of stainless steel and aluminum on the outside, with a heavy insulation core of polyurethane and fiberglass. With the lock reinforced by his ability, it was almost impossible to open using just steel pipes or crowbars. Unless they had hydraulic cutters or saws, there was no way they'd make progress, hence the cacophony of banging that had been going on for over an hour. Ignoring the noise, Lin Xian calmly continued devouring the freezer. Elsewhere, Chen Sixuan paced anxiously back and forth inside the train, her nerves frayed. However, she quickly realized that panicking wouldn't help. After checking on the young girl's condition, she began organizing the supplies across the 3 carriages while tidying up the train. Devouring complete. Mechanical energy plus 25. Mechanical devouring skill proficiency plus 8. Bonus reward, strength plus 3, defense plus 1. Deep within the freezer, Lin Xian's eyes lit up as he read the notification on the light screen before him. A big hall. Scanning the room, he saw 3 more identical large freezers. If he devoured them all, his rewards would multiply significantly. Mechanical devouring LV.1, 286/300. His devouring skill was also close to leveling up. Once upgraded, his devouring efficiency would improve even further. Energized by this thought, Lin Xian wasted no time, moving to the second freezer and beginning the devouring process. Outside, Huang Zhaojian and Huang Ji were exhausted. The 2 brothers, faces flushed and covered in sweat, had tossed aside a pile of bent steel pipes and crowbars. This damn door won't budge. The old lady stood nearby, her expression shifting as she looked at the darkening sky. Mom, over the past few nights, those monsters couldn't get in here. If even they couldn't open it, it's no surprise we can't either, Gong Li fretted. Yeah, this door's too damn sturdy. Huang Ji cursed bitterly. Huang Ji angrily tossed the steel pipe to the ground. Though he cursed incessantly, every night he secretly prayed that the door would remain as sturdy as possible, a clear case of mental contradiction. All right, stop it, the old lady commanded, her tone laced with finality. She knew that continuing was futile, especially with the commotion they'd caused now drawing numerous footsteps toward the warehouse. It's almost dark. Let's hide for now. Besides, we've locked him in with that iron chain. He won't be running anywhere. From the looks of it, without that man, the train probably can't be moved. As long as they can't escape, they'll eventually outlast themselves, she reasoned. Mom's right. All right, let's do that. Are we not getting on the train today? The chubby boy asked, disappointment written all over his face. Not today. We'll stay put one more night. Over the past few days, the family had been hiding inside the same freezer where they'd staged their baiting trap. However, the lock on that freezer door was broken, so they used steel pipes to brace it from the inside, making it just secure enough for nighttime safety. Beep, 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 beep. The alarm on Lin Xian's watch went off, causing his eyes to narrow. He knew nightfall was imminent. On the train, Chen Sixuan had drawn all the blackout curtains and was anxiously waiting for Lin Xian's response. Her gaze drifted toward the unconscious girl lying in the carriage. Unable to suppress her worry, she walked over to check the girl's breathing. After confirming she was still alive, Chen Sixuan's expression turned puzzled. The girl had been asleep for 2 full days. At 6:45 p.m., darkness descended, enveloping the entire freight platform. Low zombie groans and eerie, shuffling footsteps echoed in the night. The faint rustling noises amplified in Chen Sixuan's ears, making her heart pound. She curled up on the sofa, clutching the walkie-talkie tightly, and wrapped herself in a blanket like it was her only shield against the chaos outside. Meanwhile, the Huan family had retreated to the other freezer. They braced the door with steel pipes and crowbars and huddled in a corner deep within the freezer. As they ate, they whispered among themselves, strategizing their next move. By 7:32 p.m., Lin Xian had finished devouring the second large freezer. Devouring complete. Mechanical energy plus 25. Mechanical devouring skill proficiency plus 8. Bonus reward, strength plus 2, speed plus 1, defense plus 1. At 9:14 p.m., he completed devouring the third freezer. Devouring complete. Mechanical energy plus 25. Mechanical devouring skill proficiency plus 8. Bonus reward, strength plus 1. Although this freezer hadn't yielded as many attribute rewards, Lin Xian's excitement grew. His mechanical devouring skill had finally leveled up to LV2. Current mechanical heart level, LV.1285/500. Tip: upgrading the mechanical heart unlocks special skill rewards. At LV.3, LV.6, and LV.9, mysterious awakenings are available. Base attributes: Strength, LV.133/50. Speed, LV.19/50. Defense, LV.020/30. Current basic skills: Mechanical Devouring, LV.22/500. Mechanical Manufacturing, LV.1112/300. Mechanical Scanning, Passive. Mechanical Repair, Passive. Mechanical Operation, Passive. Special Skills: Wind Cannon, LV.112/100. Staring at the glowing screen, Lin Xian could feel the mechanical heart inside his body roaring furiously. A shiver ran through him, and his whole body trembled with excitement. Without hesitation, he turned his focus to the final freezer. Devouring progress, 2%. The progress bar began moving faster than ever, visibly accelerating before his eyes. As I thought, the improvement in devouring efficiency was a godsend. Not only did it save him precious time in critical moments, but it also greatly reduced the risks of devouring. Lin Xian glanced at his watch, started the timer, and focused intently on the task at hand. Devouring progress, 10%, 20%, 50%, 80%, 99%. So fast. Checking the timer on his watch, Lin Xian saw that, unlike the earlier freezers, which each took about 1 hour and 40 minutes, the last one had taken only 55 minutes, less than an hour. His efficiency had nearly doubled. Just as Lin Xian was about to calm his excitement, a flash of golden light appeared in front of him. Devouring complete. Mechanical energy plus 25. Mechanical devouring proficiency plus 6. Bonus reward: you have obtained the Ice Shield skill. Ice Shield? From a freezer. Lin Xian froze for a moment. It seemed that the skills he gained were related to the type of machinery or appliance he devoured. Looking at the glowing panel, he saw Ice Shield LV.10/100. Curious, he decided to test it out. He concentrated and raised his hand with the thought. Crack, crack, crack. In an instant, a small, semicircular blue ice shield rose from the ground, enveloping him. It was just tall enough to cover his shoulders. Holy sh! Lin Xian shone his flashlight on the ice shield he had created from thin air, dumbfounded. The shield wasn't very thick, about the width of a palm. Clang! He struck the shield with a short blade, producing a dull sound, much like carving into rock-hard ice that had been frozen for years. Its hardness was higher than he'd anticipated. At the same time, he felt a sharp drain on his energy, leaving him slightly lightheaded. This skill's consumption is too high, and the shield probably can't stop bullets. It's only good for emergencies, not really worth it, he muttered, disappointed. Wait a minute. Frowning, Lin Xian carefully examined the ice shield again. After a brief silence, he stepped forward, stuck out his tongue, and licked the shield. It was odorless, tasteless, and refreshingly cold. His pupils suddenly contracted as a shocking realization struck him. Hold on, this is pure ice, created out of thin air. If that's the case, wouldn't this mean I'll never run out of drinking water? In the apocalypse, clean water was an invaluable resource. Now he could conjure it out of thin air. Though the energy consumption was high, the benefit far outweighed the cost. Lin Xian was ecstatic. He eagerly chipped off a piece of ice with his knife and popped it into his mouth. The cool sensation spread throughout his body, instantly clearing his mind, which had been muddled by the freezer's foul air. Checking the time, Lin Xian made his way to the freezer door. Activating the mechanical heart, he unlocked the door's locking mechanism and hinges. The door creaked open slightly, only to be stopped by the iron chain that had been fastened from the outside. Damn old hag! Lin Xian cursed under his breath, realizing the Huan family must have tampered with the door to prevent his escape. But escaping wasn't his goal. Click. Turning on his flashlight, Lin Xian used the crack in the door to confirm the location of the other freezer where the Huan family was hiding. He switched off the flashlight and extended his finger through the gap, focusing his energy. Puff! A silent wind cannon shot out. The projectile struck the stainless steel door of the Huan family's freezer with a deafening boom. Boom! The sudden explosion echoed like thunder throughout the warehouse, shattering the quiet of the night. Inside the freezer, the Huan family jumped in fright. Who's there? Caught off guard, the brothers grabbed their pistols. But outside, all they could see was pitch-black darkness. Is it a monster? The chubby boy cowered behind Gonglei, his face pale with fear. Don't be scared, don't be scared. SHHH. Don't make a sound, the old lady whispered anxiously, her face filled with panic. Zhaojian, Ag, don't shoot. If we attract something, we're done for. The brothers nodded, nervously swallowing hard. For added caution, the old lady turned off the electronic light they had been using for dinner. The freezer was plunged into complete darkness. Uneasiness began to creep into everyone's hearts. On the other side of the freezer door, Lin Xian stood with cold resolve. So, you like trapping people like turtles in a jar? Fine. Let me teach you what the jar is and who the turtle is today. Puff! Another wind cannon shot silently out, slamming into the door of the Huan family's freezer. The deafening boom echoed again through the warehouse. Boom! Inside, the Huan family jumped up in fright once more, no longer able to sit still. There's something out there. There's something out there. Huang Ji, holding his rifle, couldn't stop trembling. What the hell is it? The two massive explosions had done more than just scare the family. Outside, the faint groans of zombies quickly grew into an ear-splitting cacophony as the undead surged toward the warehouse. But it wasn't just the zombies. Another eerie rustling sound, like something massive dragging across metal, grew louder. The friction screeches from the parked train cars were ear-piercing. Lin Xian, hearing the sound, instantly thought of the pale white giant he'd encountered before. His heart clenched. But he couldn't back down now. Through his limited night vision, he saw countless shadows flooding into the warehouse from outside. The grotesque howls and snarls echoed throughout the space, making his scalp tingle. Puff! Without hesitation, Lin Xian fired a third wind cannon. This was the most crucial and deadly shot yet. He needed to ensure the Horde's target was entirely redirected. If not, his own position would be compromised. Inside the freezer, the Huan family clearly heard the zombies swarming in. All 5 of them huddled in a corner, faces pale with terror. Huan Zhaojian and Huang Ji clutched their guns tightly, their eyes darting into the darkness. Don't panic. Don't panic. Huan Zhaojian tried to calm everyone, though his own voice trembled. The door's solid as hell. Even crowbars couldn't pry it open. Those things can't get in. Boom. The third explosion struck the door like a thunderclap, shaking the metal structure like a drum. It was as if they were sitting inside a steel barrel, with the deafening reverberation rattling their very souls. Agh! The chubby boy let out a terrified wail, only to have the old lady clamp her hand over his mouth. Shut up. What do we do? What do we do? It's fine. They can't get in. Damn it, we should have taken that train during the day. We could have run. What's the point of saying that now? Outside, the zombies had been completely riled up by the noise. They clawed and slammed into the freezer door in a frenzy. The steel pipes and crowbars bracing the door creaked and groaned under the relentless assault. Everyone inside was trembling uncontrollably, paralyzed with fear. Then, another sound emerged more terrifying than anything before. It was the sound of chewing, like a massive beast tearing through flesh and steel alike. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The noise carried immense power, accompanied by metallic screeches. The steel itself was cracking. Finally, bang, bang. The freezer door began to buckle under the strain, slowly giving way. Inside, the Huan family could hear the metal being torn apart. Their terror boiled over, and even the women and children began screaming and crying. "Ah, Mom, we're doomed. What do we do?" Sobs and wails filled the room. The snarls and growls of zombies were now inside the freezer, growing louder and closer. Something had breached the door. Huang Zhaojian and Huang Ji, faces pale and drenched in sweat, finally snapped. Unable to suppress their fear, they raised their guns and opened fire in a desperate attempt to fight back. Rat-a-tat-tat. The flashes of gunfire momentarily illuminated the pitch-black freezer. And that's when they saw it. In the midst of the horde of zombies, a massive red creature emerged. It let out a piercing screech, its gigantic mandibles snapping menacingly. The creature resembled an enormous centipede, at least as thick as an adult human and over 10 meters long. Its body was covered in crimson scales, and its countless legs writhed and scuttled rapidly. Just one glance was enough to chill the family to their cores. Ag! Their blood-curdling screams echoed through Warehouse 14. But within moments, the gunfire and screams ceased. All that remained were the snarls of zombies and the grotesque crunching of the centipede-like creature devouring its prey. Meanwhile, on the other side, Lin Xian quietly sealed his own freezer door shut. Through the observation window, he caught a glimpse of the monstrous insect's shadow and didn't dare make a sound. He had initially expected the pale giant to show up, but this thing, it was far more terrifying. Cursing silently, Lin Xian muttered to himself, "What the hell is this? A parade of demons? What kind of nightmare planet is this?" In comparison, zombies suddenly seemed tame, even pitiable. After all, they were just mutated remnants of humanity. Lin Xian's heart pounded furiously. His driving tigers to devour wolves strategy had been reckless, almost suicidal. If anything went wrong, even hiding on the infinite train might not guarantee his survival. Damn it, the armor needs upgrading. The weapons need upgrading. The engine needs upgrading too. Beep beep, beep beep. Lin Xian silenced the alarm on his watch. After 2 sleepless nights, his mind was already starting to feel foggy. Listening to the eerie sounds outside and smelling the stench wafting through the freezer warehouse, he endured until 1600 hours the next day. It was finally daylight. However, it was already afternoon, leaving only 2 hours and 45 minutes until nightfall. Remaining vigilant, Lin Xian peered out through the observation window. The warehouse was brightly lit, and he could finally make out the scene outside. A large hole had been blasted in the door of freezer warehouse number 1. The thick, custom-made freezer door, constructed of stainless steel and composite materials, was grotesquely bent. The ground was splattered with blood, and bits of flesh were scattered everywhere on the door, the floor, and other surfaces. Several zombies were still wandering outside the freezer, some gnawing on the remains of a half-eaten corpse. Lin Xian recognized a familiar tattoo on the corpse. It appeared to be the middle-aged man from earlier. A surge of satisfaction rose in his heart. Serves you right. In the apocalypse, those who set traps to fish for others deserved nothing less than their whole family perishing. His expression turned cold as he quickly grabbed his walkie-talkie to check in on the other side. "Teacher Chan, are you all right?" On the other side, Chan Sixuan, who had endured a night of terror, finally let out a sigh of relief when she heard Lin Xian's voice. She responded quickly, I'm fine. What about you?" "I'm fine too." Reassured that Chan Sixuan was safe, Lin Xian relaxed a little. As he scanned the area outside and confirmed that the terrifying centipede-like creature was nowhere to be seen, he continued, "I'll be back shortly. Stick to the plan from yesterday. There's an electric locomotive at track 4. I'll need your help in a bit. Got it?" After finishing the conversation, Lin Xian opened the freezer door once again. Peering through the gap, he fired a wind cannon to shatter the iron chain holding it shut. Hearing the noise, the zombies outside snarled and lunged toward him. Without hesitation, Lin Xian swung his blade, unleashing several wind cannons in quick succession. The zombies were swiftly dispatched. However, last night's commotion had attracted far too many zombies. As he stepped out of the warehouse, he saw dozens of them still wandering around outside. After a moment's thought, he quietly made his way to warehouse number 1, an empty building materials warehouse. Once there, he fired several wind cannons to create noise, successfully luring the dozens of zombies away from the platform. As long as no eerie creatures from the night were involved, Lin Xian's abilities made handling ordinary zombies relatively simple. Soon, he sprinted off the platform and reached the Huanxin 7F electric locomotive he had spotted yesterday. Activating his mechanical heart, he opened the automated door to the cockpit. He unhooked the locomotive's front, detached the bridge connections, and the traction motor let out a low rumble as it slowly pulled the massive electric beast away from the platform. Meanwhile, Lin Xian also disconnected the first carriage from the Whale 03E. After reconfiguring the sequence and with Chen Sixuan's assistance, he successfully connected the Huanxin 7F electric locomotive to the second position. Now, the infinite train had 5 carriages. At the front was the heavily armored Whale 03E heavy gas turbine locomotive, which served as the cockpit. The second carriage was the Huanxin 7F electric locomotive, repurposed for energy recovery and power storage. The third, fourth, and fifth carriages were the living compartments. The Huanxin 7F was twice as long as the Whale 03E, giving it a futuristic appearance. Both locomotives were designed with bridge connections, allowing personnel to move freely between the front and rear. However, since this was a temporary addition, Lin Xian hadn't had time to upgrade the electric locomotive's armor. After completing the connection, there was no time for further modifications. Before nightfall, he started the newly configured infinite train. Heading eastward along the Jianjida line. Clang clang, clang clang. The train sped up steadily. Lin Xian increased the speed to about 80 kilometers per hour. However, with the additional load, his physical energy was depleting much faster. This section leading to Biwang Station doesn't have any tunnels, and the terrain is relatively flat. You'll just need to watch out for fallen rocks blocking the tracks, Chen Sixuan advised while jotting down the speed in her logbook. Lin Xian nodded. "All right. I'll stop immediately if anything happens. How about that group from yesterday? They're dead." Lin Xian glanced at Chen Sixuan and added, "That whole family was scum. Setting traps to rob and kill people. They were all eaten by zombies last night." Chen Sixuan's expression changed slightly. She knew Lin Xian was capable, but hearing him casually state that an entire family was wiped out still unsettled her. In such a short time, the harmonious, safe world they had once known had turned into a brutal, kill or be killed hell. For someone like Chen Sixuan, who grew up in a well-off, highly educated family, it was hard to accept such a stark reality all at once. "ZZZ, this is the Oasis convoy. Final announcement, final announcement. If you have supplies, weapons, or special abilities, you can join our team for a chance to survive. Safety in numbers, don't cling to false hope. ZZZ, the outbound Route 312 highway is completely blocked. You can only detour through Forestry Road. A massive zombie horde is gathering in the Eastern District. Don't shoot unless absolutely necessary, or no one will make it out. ZZZ Zhang City Bunker welcomes all ability users and beautiful women. We are based in a military-grade nuclear bunker in John City, with over 300 people and clear division of labor. We can withstand a polar night. ZZZ, this is the last day. Once again, I'm in apartment A1304 of Mingwan Complex. Plenty of supplies and the safest survival space in the apocalypse. Only accepting women aged 16 to 30. 2 spots left. ZZZ patrol camp at Yubei City reports, Yancheng and Fengcheng have fully succumbed to the polar night. Along the Lingshan mountain range, from the eastern direction, John City to Lowland City and then Hechi and Minjiang regions, a large-scale emergence of eerie creatures has been detected. Radiation levels are unknown. Over the radio, news came that the nearby Yancheng and Fengcheng had completely fallen. Survivor reports suggested that traveling 200 to 300 kilometers east could grant an additional hour of daylight. This also gave a rough estimate of the dark tide engulfing the third abyss. 200 or 300 kilometers might not seem far, but in an apocalyptic world with paralyzed transportation and zombies everywhere, entering the night meant endless fear of death. Escaping that far wasn't easy. Chen Sixuan calculated using the logbook, if the survivors' intel is correct, we should reach Biwang Station by tomorrow, and daylight might come around 16:30. We won't get that far. Sitting in the driver's seat, Lin Xian shook his head. Once it gets dark, we'll have to stop. I'm not confident about driving at night. The road conditions, visibility, all of it's too risky. As he spoke, Lin Xian began to realize he might need radar or drones to help detect obstacles. Without them, blindly pressing forward could lead to broken tracks or massive debris blocking the way. At best, this would derail the train. At worst, it could end in total destruction. The train pulled out of John City Station and left the city. Gradually, the surroundings grew quieter, with only the faint hum of the rails echoing in the air. Lin Xian looked up at the massive cloud formation looming over John City. The ominous cluster hung motionless in the sky, evoking a deep sense of dread every time he saw it. Many people had seen it, and there was no doubt that some kind of atmospheric creature resided within something far more terrifying than zombies or eerie entities. No one knew what it was. For humans, the only choices were to cower in fortresses or flee in panic. Who would dare investigate the true form of such an apocalyptic being? Outside the city, the scenery gradually transformed into mountains and farmlands. The blood-soaked, desolate, and smoke-filled landscapes faded away, offering a fleeting illusion of having escaped the apocalypse. Lin Xian had assumed it would be rare to see any people along the way. Unexpectedly, a dirt road running parallel to the railway began to reveal scattered vehicles, mostly off-road jeeps. A few sedans, caked in mud and loaded to the brim with belongings, roared down the road as their drivers floored the gas pedal. When one of the jeeps noticed the train passing by, its window rolled down. A middle-aged man stuck his head out and shouted, "Holy sh*T, a train. D*MN, that's amazing." Another jeep, covered in makeshift paint designs, opened its roof hatch. A buzz-cut young man emerged, clutching an AK rifle. He fired a burst into the air, the gunshots echoing loudly. "Hey, train crew. Got any food or water? Want to join our Oasis convoy?" the young man shouted at the train. But in the cockpit, Lin Xian ignored him entirely, staying focused on operating the locomotive. F***CK, the buzz-cut youth cursed under his breath when he got no response and slumped back into his seat. "Brother Yang, should we let Brother Lu Wei in the front?" "No," said a yellow-haired youth in the passenger seat, his voice low and deep. Zhang Daong waved it off nonchalantly. "Why? So we can all hop on the train or something?" The yellow-haired youth's eyes widened as he responded with a peculiar expression, "Brother Yang, the fuel." Hearing this, Zhang Daong suddenly realized. He slapped his thigh and spat, "*T, you're right. A functioning train could hold thousands of liters of fuel. Even if it didn't have that much, A few hundred liters would be enough to sustain their convoy for a couple of days. He immediately grabbed his walkie-talkie. Brother Wei, there's a big one heading along the Jianjiao line. It's a train. I think it's carrying a lot of fuel. A train? A raspy voice responded over the walkie-talkie, sounding intrigued. Yeah, I figure it'll reach Yishin Station in about 10 minutes. What do you think? I'll block it. Second team, circle around from behind. Got it. 10 kilometers ahead of the convoy, a small team of vehicles was speeding along. Leading the group was a modified Raptor truck. In the backseat sat Lu Wei, with his square, stern face and a scowl that made him look menacing. A heavily made-up young woman clung to him as he surveyed the road ahead. Third brother, take the next turn off. That big one is headed for Yushin Station. Got it, boss. In this convoy, Lu Wei's word was law. Before the apocalypse, Lu Wei wasn't some crime lord. He was just a small-time vendor at a local market. But after the apocalypse, he unexpectedly awakened an ability, which instantly elevated him to a position of power. Friends and relatives, once dismissive of him, now groveled for his protection. Lu Wei, a cunning man, used his newfound abilities to recruit a group of hardened, armed survivors. Soon, others began offering him supplies and valuables in exchange for his protection. In just a few days, Lu Wei had gathered over 20 loyal followers, living like a self-proclaimed king. Even the high-class women who had once looked down on him now threw themselves at him. His nights became filled with parties and indulgence, and his confidence soared. Now, hearing his men report that a massive train had dared to operate in his territory without offering tribute and was even attempting to leave Zhang City under his watch, his pride was bruised. He immediately prepared to play the role of a roadblock. After all, this was already part of his plan when leaving Zhang City. Back on the train, Lin Xian furrowed his brow at the sound of the rifle shots from earlier. Out of caution, he increased the train's speed slightly. Compared to vehicles navigating dirt roads, the train had a significant advantage in speed on its smooth rails. That Oasis convoy, I just heard them on the radio earlier. Their leader is said to be an ability user as well, Chan Sixuan said, her voice tinged with worry after hearing the gunfire. I heard too, Lin Xian replied. But they're traveling by road, and we're on the railway. We should stay out of each other's way and avoid any conflict. Despite his calm words, the mention of another ability user left Lin Xian uneasy. The Infinite Train project had many advantages but also one glaring weakness: it was far too conspicuous. A massive train rumbling across the tracks was impossible to miss and bound to attract attention from survivors. We also need to recruit more teammates. If everyone starts targeting us, it'll be tough to handle, Chan Sixuan remarked, giving Lin Xian a surprised look before quickly lowering her gaze. I saw the posts you shared before. I think if people don't know about your ability, they won't easily believe in your plan. I know. Lin Xian spoke boldly, it's quality over quantity when it comes to teammates. My ability isn't meant to make me everyone's chauffeur. I'm not letting just anyone on this train. If someone isn't valuable, I'd rather not create more trouble for myself. He glanced at Chan Sixuan and grinned. And, of course, they need to be someone I approve of. Chan Sixuan's face turned inexplicably red. She thought Lin Xian was flirting with her and immediately felt a bit awkward. I didn't mean it that way, Lin Xian coughed lightly. I'm not talking about good looks, but things like character and personality. His clarification only made Chan Sixuan's face turn even redder. She avoided his gaze entirely, keeping her head down and pretending to be busy recording something in the logbook. Clang clang, clang clang. The train sped across the flat plains. It was then that Lin Xian, with his enhanced vision, spotted something far ahead on the tracks near Yushin Station, a damaged car deliberately placed across the rails. The positioning was so precise it was obvious that it had been intentionally set up to block the train. An ambush. Lin Xian's expression turned serious. He shouted to Chen Sixuan, "Get to the back. Quick. Hold on tight." Realizing the imminent danger, Chen Sixuan's face changed. She obeyed without hesitation, running toward the rear to carriage number 1. There, she saw the young girl who was still asleep and, without thinking, ran over to embrace her tightly for protection. Meanwhile, behind one of the columns on the Yishan station platform, Lu Wei and his men were already in position, armed to the teeth. Hearing the rumble of the approaching train, Lu Wei peeked out to assess the situation. But when he saw that the train showed no signs of slowing down, his face twisted in fury. He bellowed, "Open fire! Make the B** stop!" At his command, his men sprang out from behind the columns, wielding a variety of rifles and shotguns. Without a word, they unleashed a hail of bullets toward the rapidly approaching train cockpit. Bang! Bang! Bang bang bang! Bang bang! Gunfire erupted in an instant. Inside the cockpit, Lin Xian gritted his teeth and hunched down behind a control panel, gripping the handles tightly. Rather than slowing down, he willed the train to accelerate even more. "Fuck you all!" Lin Xian cursed in his mind. "The whole reason I chose to drive a train is so I can crush bastards like you into dust." AHH. With a loud roar, Lin Xian felt his blood boiling as he charged straight into the storm of gunfire. Boom! A 200-ton heavy gas turbine locomotive at high speed was unstoppable. The thin-skinned sedan placed on the tracks was obliterated in an instant, shattered into sparks and debris. Inside the cockpit, Lin Xian and Chen Sixuan only felt a slight jolt before the train surged forward as if it had merely run over a cardboard box. Bang! 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 Bullets rained down on the all-metal train body, leaving only faint white marks. However, one ricocheting bullet hit one of Lu Wei's lackeys in the leg, piercing straight through his thigh. "Ah!" The lackey screamed, clutching his bleeding leg in agony. In mere moments, the train roared past the ambush point. Lu Wei, watching the scene unfold, felt his authority crumble and was furious. His eyes glowed green, and with a loud rip, his shirt tore apart as 4 eerie green tentacles extended from his back. Moving with the speed and precision of a spider, he rapidly climbed onto the tracks in pursuit of the train. These tentacles possessed immense strength, capable of lifting objects weighing over a ton. They also granted him extraordinary agility. Lu Wei had even trained himself to improve their strength and speed, smugly dubbing himself the Four-Winged King. Thud! Just as Lin Xian and Chen Sixuan thought they had broken through the ambush, an eerie sound came from the roof of the train. Lin Xian's expression turned grim. He immediately reduced the train's speed slightly and grabbed his short blade. He had to slow the train, otherwise, he wouldn't have the focus to deal with the impending danger. Thump! 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 The sound of something clinging to the roof alarmed Chen Sixuan, who curled into a ball in fear. Lin Xian tensed, listening closely. Suddenly, a middle-aged man with tentacles appeared outside the cockpit window. Well, you've got guts, kid, daring to charge through my blockade." Seeing that the driver was just a young man, Lu Wei cursed loudly. But then, his eyes caught sight of Chen Sixuan cowering in the corridor. His expression instantly changed to one of delight. "Well, what do we have here? A pretty little lady." Chen Sixuan's face went pale at the sight of Lu Wei's tentacles. His monstrous appearance, with glowing green eyes and squirming appendages, made him look no different from a creature out of a horror movie. An ability user. Lin Xian's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected that the ambush would involve an ability user. This was his first encounter with one, and it was nothing like he had imagined. After all, who would have thought an ability could make someone grow tentacles? Was this an ability or nuclear radiation? Thud. Without a word, Lu Wei smashed one of his tentacles against the windshield. The high-strength glass, 10 to 15 millimeters thick and capable of withstanding rifle fire, cracked in a spiderweb pattern under the impact. Lin Xian was shocked. The windshield, which could shrug off bullets with barely a scratch, was damaged with a single blow. Just how terrifying was this guy's strength? Lu Wei, however, was equally surprised. He knew the strength of his tentacles and hadn't expected the glass to hold up. Clearly, the train's defensive capabilities were not to be underestimated. D****. Lin Xian's expression turned cold as he slammed on the brakes, bringing the train to a screeching halt. Caught off guard, Lu Wei, who hadn't expected the sudden stop, was thrown backward by the inertia and tumbled off the train. Lock the door. Lin Xian rushed past Chen Sixuan, grabbed his short blade, and opened the cockpit's rear door. What are you doing? Chen Sixuan exclaimed in shock as she watched him stop the train. Taking him out. Lin Xian replied, leaping out and slamming the iron door shut behind him. He knew that an ability user like Lu Wei, who could keep up with a moving train and break through its defenses, couldn't be ignored. Hiding inside the train would only delay the inevitable. If the windshield was shattered, he would need hours to repair it, time he didn't have. Once night fell and his location was exposed, he'd be an easy target for the eerie creatures like the centipede monster from last night. Lu Wei, covered in dirt, rose furiously. When he saw the young man leap from the train wielding a steel blade, he couldn't help but laugh. What's this? A hero coming to save the damsel in distress? He sneered, his tentacles spreading out behind him, making him appear enormous. With an arrogant tone, he declared, "Sorry, kid, but today I'm taking your life, your train, and I'll take good care of your woman too." Lin Xian's eyes narrowed. Without a word, he raised his hand and unleashed a charged wind cannon aimed directly at Lu Wei's face. Whoosh! The sharp blast of air shot forward. Lu Wei had just begun to react when he felt as though his forehead had been struck by a sledgehammer, sending him flying backward. **T. Another ability user. Lu Wei's heart raced in panic. He realized that Lin Xian, like himself, was an ability user. Having only recently awakened his abilities, Lu Wei lacked combat experience. Caught off guard, he had been hit hard, and cold sweat dripped down his back. Still, his enhanced body and reflexes allowed him to recover quickly. While airborne, one of his tentacles lashed out like lightning, wrapping around Lin Xian's ankle. The train tracks ran along a steep ravine. As Lu Wei tried to stabilize himself using his other tentacles, they tore through the wire fencing surrounding the tracks. Both he and Lin Xian tumbled down the slope, crashing into the depths below. Lin Xian hadn't anticipated the tentacle's speed or strength. Even after a close-range wind cannon, Lu Wei was merely sent flying with a shallow wound on his forehead. The defensive power of an ability user was terrifying. As Lu Wei's tentacle coiled around his ankle, Lin Xian felt an intense crushing force, making him gasp in pain. If not for his enhanced strength and defense, his ankle would have been snapped in an instant. Buzz! 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 As the world spun around him, Lu Wei's tentacles tore through several shrubs, but they failed to stop his descent. Lin Xian, meanwhile, abandoned his short blade, curled up with his hands over his head, and was dragged along by Lu Wei until both of them rolled to the bottom of the slope, landing near the riverbed. Excruciating pain. When Lin Xian finally managed to pry his eyes open, waves of searing agony radiated from every corner of his body. His first instinct was to scan his surroundings. Not far away, he spotted Lu Wei, his tentacles spread out as the man staggered to his feet. Because Lu Wei had been in front during the fall, his massive, tentacled form had absorbed most of the sharp rocks and vegetation along the way. Now, he was drenched in blood, looking utterly disheveled. Ugh! FCK this SHT. Though his defensive attributes had significantly increased, Lu Wei's back was now mangled, the flesh torn to ribbons. One of his legs was dislocated, and the pain was so intense that he was grinding his molars to dust. Fueled by rage, Lu Wei glared at Lin Xian, who he had dragged down with him. For the first time, Lu Wei no longer underestimated him. This young man had managed to knock him back barehanded. What kind of ability was this? Lu Wei couldn't make sense of it. In a situation like this, he knew he had to go all out. The only option was to strike first and decisively. But as Lu Wei focused his gaze on the fallen Lin Xian, he suddenly realized that the young man had already opened his eyes and was pointing a finger directly at his forehead. Oh, F***CK, not again. Having already suffered once, Lu Wei's heart skipped a beat. He instinctively extended all four of his tentacles to shield his face. Yet, the anticipated attack didn't come. Instead, the sudden movement caused the wounds on Lu Wei's back so deep that his bones were visible to tear open further. Blood gushed out like a stream, nearly causing him to faint from the pain. A faint. Lu Wei had no time to cry out in pain. He peeled back his tentacles to find Lin Xian charging at him like a hunting dog, his hands clawing the ground for leverage. The young man closed the distance in an instant and, with a suicidal determination, delivered a devastating punch straight at Lu Wei's exposed face. Boom! The full-force blow nearly shattered Lu Wei's nose, making his vision go black. His tentacles thrashed wildly in response, flailing at random in the air, but none of them landed a hit. He had never expected the seemingly young and inexperienced guy to be so ferocious, using a feint to create an opening and then striking with such precision and brutality. This was far beyond the reaction speed and combat instincts of someone like Lu Wei, who had spent most of his life running a vegetable stall in a marketplace. After suffering two crushing blows in quick succession, Lu Wei's confidence began to crumble. Fear crept into his heart. His convoy had only been on the road for a single day, and already, Lu Wei could feel the cold grip of death looming over him. Lin Xian's heart pounded wildly as he stared at Lu Wei, who was sprawled on the ground. The blood, the pain, it all seemed to ignite a frenzy deep within him. I can't die. I don't want to die. The primal instinct for survival surged within him, numbing the searing pain that racked his body. With Lu Wei momentarily knocked down, Lin Xian didn't waste even half a second. He turned and raised his hand, unleashing another wind cannon directly at Lu Wei's face. Whoosh! A bloody hole burst open on Lu Wei's face. Ah! Lu Wei howled in agony, his four tentacles whipping into action. They swept up the smooth pebbles from the riverbank and hurled them at Lin Xian with such force that the stones whistled through the air. Lin Xian didn't dare underestimate the attack and immediately sidestepped to evade. I'll crush you to death. Lu Wei roared, his desperation driving him to madness. He furiously grabbed more rocks with his tentacles, launching them at Lin Xian with relentless force. Through the chaos, Lu Wei began to analyze the situation. The young man before him seemed to rely heavily on agility. Aside from that ranged attack, which acted like some kind of hidden weapon, the youth didn't appear to have any other threatening abilities. If he were truly powerful, Lu Wei reasoned, he would have already bombarded him non-stop like an automatic rifle. The fact that Lin Xian hadn't done so yet meant that his abilities likely consumed a significant amount of energy. Despite his brutish appearance, Lu Wei had a knack for keen observations. After all, years of running a small business had sharpened his sense of judgment. You're running out of tricks, aren't you? Lu Wei sneered, trying to provoke Lin Xian. Lin Xian remained impassive, his expression unreadable. Raising his right hand, he pointed his index finger directly at Lu Wei's face. On instinct, Lu Wei raised his tentacles to shield his head. But while protecting his face, he couldn't see what Lin Xian was doing next, and that uncertainty unnerved him. Thinking quickly, Lu Wei split his focus. While two of his tentacles guarded his head, The other two scooped up more rocks and flung them at Lin Xian. Lin Xian, seeing Lu Wei's divided attention, narrowed his eyes. He tilted his head slightly to dodge a flying rock, then subtly shifted his aim downward. His finger was now pointed at Lu Wei's crotch. Whoosh! The wind cannon tore through. Lu Wei's entire body shuddered violently as an explosive wave of pain overwhelmed him. He opened his mouth wide to scream, his face twisted in horror. He had spent the entire fight guarding against an attack to his head. He never imagined Lin Xian would aim for his little Lu Wei. As Lu Wei screamed, his focus shattered. In that fleeting moment of agony, Lin Xian darted forward like a ghost, closing the gap with terrifying speed. Sensing the approaching threat, Lu Wei's primal survival instincts kicked in. His 4 tentacles lashed out in unison, aiming to obliterate Lin Xian. Die, you bastard! Boom! Lu Wei's tentacles smashed down with all their might, only to collide with the suddenly conjured ice wall. The impact shattered the wall into shards, sending icy fragments flying in all directions. Before Lu Wei could register what had happened, Lin Xian had already slipped through the gap. By the time Lu Wei turned his attention forward again, all he saw was a single finger. A finger pointed directly at his eye. Wait. In that split second, regret flooded Lu Wei's mind. Whoosh! The wind cannon pierced his left eye, leaving behind a bloody hole. Lu Wei's body stiffened as he collapsed backward, his once defiant form now lifeless. He could never have imagined that despite possessing a Dr. Octopus-level superpower, he would meet his end at the hands of a seemingly insignificant young man. He had ruled as a self-styled warlord for mere days, only to die so suddenly and absurdly. Cough, cough. Seeing Lu Wei fall, Lin Xian immediately spat out a few mouthfuls of clotted blood. But he didn't allow himself a moment of rest. He grabbed a large pebble from the ground, staggered over to Lu Wei's corpse, and raised the stone high. Bam! 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 Each time the rock came down, Lu Wei's tentacles twitched in eerie, lifeless spasms. Lin Xian didn't stop until all movement ceased. Only then did he collapse onto the ground, gasping for breath. Huff! Huff! As the adrenaline subsided, waves of sharp pain coursed through Lin Xian's body. From the intensity of the battle, he was fortunate not to have fractured any bones, but he could feel internal injuries and numerous external wounds all over his body. Suddenly, a strange light flickered across the sky, catching his eye. His expression shifted. Crap! Meanwhile, back on the train, Chen Sixuan was pressed deep into the corridor, her nerves stretched taut as she stared at the cockpit door that was being pounded unrepeatedly. Open the door. Open it now. Bang, bang, bang. A yellow-haired thug climbed onto the windshield, slamming the butt of his handgun against the glass with all his might. However, aside from the initial cracks caused by Lu Wei earlier, the windshield remained unscathed. Get the hell out of the way. Another man climbed up, kicking the yellow-haired thug aside. With a cigarette in his mouth, he aimed an assault rifle at the windshield and unleashed a volley of bullets. Rat-a-tat-tat. Sparks flew, and stray rounds ricocheted off the glass. D*MN, this thing is tough. Is this bulletproof glass? Watch it, Durfey. Bullets don't have eyes. The door won't budge either unless we get a cutting tool. Cutting tool? Where the F***ck am I supposed to find one right now? Forget it, let's just leave for now. It's almost nightfall. At the mention of nightfall, the group of thugs all froze for a moment. The guy's dead anyway, thanks to Brother Wei. The chick's as good as canned meat. Will come back for her tomorrow with better tools. Heh, don't worry, I stacked some rocks on the tracks. That train isn't going anywhere. Oh, Durfey, about the Zhao family's car that Brother Wei used to block the road, there's no space left in the convoy. What should we do? Let them squeeze in somewhere. Squeeze in? Screw that. Tell them to F***ck off. They didn't bring much to the table anyway, dragging their whole damn family around. All right, we'll just leave them, then. Cursing and grumbling, the group finally left. Inside the train, Chan Sixuan watched the clock in the carriage, its hands ticking away second by second. Her heart felt like it was lodged in her throat. Is he dead? Night is falling. What do I do? Her face was tense, her body frozen as she clung tightly to the lever by the door, forcing herself to remain rational. 10 minutes later, frantic knocking suddenly echoed from outside. Startled, Chan Sixuan thought it might be Lin Xian and was about to respond when a woman's urgent voice cried out from the other side. Is anyone there? Please, is anyone inside? I'm begging you, let my family in. Miss. A bespectacled man climbed up to the window near the cockpit. When he spotted Chan Sixuan, he immediately pleaded, Please, can you open the door and let us in to hide? It's almost nightfall. I'm begging you, the woman outside wailed desperately. Amidst her cries, a baby's sharp wailing pierced the air, its wah sounds chilling to the core. Miss, please, we won't eat anything, we won't take anything. We just need a place to hide. Our car is destroyed, we have nowhere else to go. Sub. Please, I'm begging you, show some kindness. Here. The woman's voice turned hysterical. If you don't trust us, can you at least save my baby? He's so little, he won't eat much, please. Please, I'm begging you. The woman's cries, the man's pleas, the baby's screams, all these voices bombarded Chan Sixuan. Curled up in a corner, she clamped her hands over her ears, tears streaming silently down her face. Inside, she was screaming, Stop it. Please, stop shouting. The clock in the cockpit continued to tick. Gradually, the cries faded. The desperate knocking ceased. Night had fallen.